Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosovich, George Stoya here from the SoonerScoop.com studios. Welcome back to the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. Josh McCuistion in Houston HQ. A little bit of winter weather possibly hitting Houston. I know the DFW is under the gun here coming up, but welcome back in. It's been a busy weekend in the portal, obviously. Let's start, though. Well, first off, we got to start. Happy anniversary to you, George, January 6th. Anything to say?
No comment.
All right. I know it's a big day for you and for others.
It's not ready for that.
But we move on. The portal report here. Oklahoma has picked up a couple guys. And say what? A couple stickers? What kind of stickers are we working with here, Josh?
We've got some Christmas stickers. I was told these were for Dad of the Year, but I don't know if that really is going to hold up. This is the final day of the girls still at home, so we're getting by as fast and loose as we possibly can at this moment.
I was going to say
definitely loose with the unbuttoned shirt there.
Yeah, show a little chest here, will you?
Oh, see, that's old guy stuff. At some point, you just stop caring. You're like, yeah, it's out there.
My good friend Tommy Tuesday did. He made it known today, even. Like, we got to be done with the Happy New Year stuff if you're just getting back into the swing of things with work. Much like Christmas, it's over. We got to move past. We're back into a normal schedule now, but we will allow it on this one day. Let's go back into last week because Oklahoma did get the news with Kendall Dolby. He has made the announcement that he is going to be returning, and continued good news for Oklahoma in terms of retention from players coming back for another season with Brent Venables.
Yeah, awesome news. I think expected news. Like, I don't think this was a surprise, but just to hear it, in today's day and age of the transfer portal
sure.
and all of that, I think it's always good to hear that. But this is a guy that, we talked about it, I think, on the last show, that he was arguably like their best player defensively until he 100%. Got hurt. Like, he was definitely an X factor. He fits that mold at the cheetah position in terms of he's maybe not the biggest guy, but he plays with his head on fire, and he's just kind of a rocket there at that cheetah spot. We'll see how he comes back from the obviously really serious ankle injury, but you do feel really good about him. And again, this defense, all the guys coming back, you would think they could be really good next year.
It will be interesting to see just how, I guess, much he can do during the spring. Yeah. But certainly, Josh, when you talk about Kendall Dolby, and George mentioned it there, what he was able to do in the first couple games of the season, it was a significant loss for Oklahoma defensively when he went out with the injury against Tennessee.
Guys, I think it's a credit to that defensive staff that it wasn't more noticeable than it was, because Kendall Dolby was playing at a really, really high level. And I think he is, it's so interesting because, we've seen it year over year for 20 years in this Brent Venables scheme, whether it was at Oklahoma or Clemson. They have very different varieties of what that cheetah can be. I mean, it can be kind of a big, almost linebacker type of player, or it can be a guy like Kendall that's basically a nickel. And so I think there's a lot of different stuff that they do with that. And I really, Kendall Dolby, like George was saying, it's his ability to be physical that allows him to play that role. Because we all know he can cover, he can do that part, but he will come up and play run. He'll put his hat on you, in the run game, that kind of stuff. So I think that allows him to be so flexible, so versatile. And this is big for Oklahoma. If he comes back and is 90% of the guy that we saw last year, that's a huge win for Oklahoma. That's a better player. Guys, I don't think it's unsafe to say, that's better than anybody they were going to find in the portal. So that's almost like getting a big-time portal addition with how early he went out last year.
Oklahoma did get a pair of commitments from the transfer portal on the defensive side of the football, and we'll start with Marvin Jones Jr., who makes the announcement on Sunday that he has signed with Oklahoma. Or, it was reported by Hayes Fawcett and then obviously, Pete Nakos, with On3. Certainly somebody that, one of two names that I'm sure if you follow high school recruiting, you are familiar with the two that signed or committed to Oklahoma over the weekend. Let's start with Marvin Jones Jr., 36 career games, 10 starts, 41 tackles, 20 of those solo. In 2024, he had 25 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, and 4 sacks for Florida State. Josh, and you wrote it up on Monday morning. What is Oklahoma getting with Marvin Jones Jr. added to the fold?
He's a guy that, in high school, Eddie, I went down and I actually had a chance to watch him in person, met his mom. Like, we talked on the sideline. It was like I really got a feel for the entire kind of Jones group there that night. And Marvin, at the time, you're like, wow, like this guy can be truly special. And you still see it at times at Florida State. The burst is there. I mean, guys, and he's listed at 255 now. With what you see when he comes off the corner, when Florida State would allow him, when he was just really getting upfield and trying to attack, man, guys that big don't usually move like that. So there's still some stuff you're like, wow, that's kind of amazing. At the same time, Florida State goes 2-10. I thought there were times where he looked like a guy that was playing on a 2-10 team. Not so much in that, oh, he can't play, just how interested is he? Like how engaged was he with what was going on? I struggled to believe that's a possibility playing under a guy like Brent Venables and Miguel Chavis. Like he won't play if that's the way that's going to go. So like I think they believe they can click something with him, make him get back to the level he's capable of. But guys, the physical talent, Marvin Jones is a draftable player based on physical measurables and his skill set. It's just a matter of, can he run like he needs to and be that kind of difference maker that frankly OU is going to try to set him up to be?
I really like this pickup, guys. I think that the ceiling is obviously extremely high, but you talk about a guy that really hasn't had the career that he had hoped for so far, and this is kind of a make it or break it season for him. I think this is a really nice pickup for Oklahoma. Brings in some experience, obviously the size. I mean, this is a guy that you love, seeing get off your bus, right? Like he certainly fits the mold of an SEC defensive end, and you pair that with a guy like R. Mason Thomas. If he comes back, we'll see. I don't know if you guys know anything about.
Still that last one that's out there.
Yeah,
right?
have you seen the Grease movie?
No, well, yeah, I've seen Grease. Of course, I've seen Grease.
I mean, I don't know what the hell any of that means. But,
I don't either.
I still think we all think that he's gonna be back. We'll see. But let's say he is. You pair him with R. Mason Thomas. Those are your two edges. That's pretty damn good. And I know you lose a guy in Ethan Downs that was solid. You knew what you were getting from down to down. Marvin Jones Jr., if he can reach his potential, is a guy that is going to be a huge impact on this defense. Somebody that can get after the quarterback, can hold the edge in the run game. Like this is somebody that you pair with R. Mason Thomas. And then you bring in young guys like Danny Okoye, Nigel Smith, PJ Adebawore, who I think we all would hope he makes a step finally next year. You gotta love that defensive end room.
Seems like a really good group. You seem like somebody that would have fit in with the T-Birds, maybe.
Me?
Or Grease, yeah. Were you a greaser?
I think I was a greaser.
Yeah, you're from the T-town. You're from Tulsa.
Yeah.
What's the movie that is based out of there? They have the house.
Oh, The Outsiders.
Outsiders.
Yeah.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get to the second
golden,
commitment from the weekend out of the portal, let us tell you about William & Lauren. As the official custom clothier of OU football, William & Lauren outfits your favorite OU players in custom suits that boost their confidence off the field to match their confidence on the field. Their perfectly tailored clothing ensures every Sooner stands out in comfort and style at prices that make luxury accessible. Visit William & Lauren in Oklahoma City or online at williamandlauren.com. Dress like a champion and make your style as legendary as Oklahoma football. They'll soon have a brick and mortar in Tulsa as well, and they don't know this yet, but possibly be outfitting George Stoya on his wedding day.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I need to hit him up.
You absolutely do. We can make that happen. Thank you to William & Lauren. The second commitment, a little bit more familiar here in the Sooner State, played at Oklahoma State, went to Beggs High School. Kendall Daniels finally is an Oklahoma Sooner, and he makes that announcement, or reported announcement coming on Monday. He will be joining the Oklahoma program. Him and Marvin Jones Jr. both visited, I believe, on the same day last week on Thursday. But another guy, Josh, that I think certainly it was talked about on social media throughout the season, maybe looked disinterested at times, but certainly a really good fit for Brent Venables in this defense.
Well, and back when Kendall was being recruited, it was kind of like, well, what's he going to become? Well, Kendall's there now. He's 235 pounds. You're like, okay, he's more of a linebacker, at most kind of a cheetah hybrid for Oklahoma. I mean, I think that would be kind of a like for like with Deshaun McCullough. Just Kendall Daniels has played a lot of safety in his career, so I think he's a little more comfortable in some of those coverage situations that he'll end up with in Oklahoma's defense. So I like this. This is a very easy fit. It makes a lot of sense. And again, you got to give Oklahoma's staff a lot of credit here, because there was talk. I mean, guys, I'm talking a week ago that Oklahoma just wasn't really going to be able to get into it. They weren't sure how interested he was. Some people, when I talked around around Beggs and that program, that obviously still have a lot of connection with Kendall. It was just kind of, he's kind of lukewarm about it. But it seemed like Oklahoma kind of turned up the heat. And then from there in, it was just job done. Like they really did a nice job closing this out. And again, I think they get a really versatile player. They can do a lot of stuff with him. He brings, like you were mentioning, Eddie, a ton of experience. This guy's played a lot of football. And for all that we talk about with this defense and all, this could be a really good group. And, George mentioned R. Mason Thomas, and we know how much talent returns to the defensive tackle room. When you look at linebacker and kind of safety and really just the back seven, there's talent. There's guys we've seen plenty of, but there's not tons and tons of experience. So I think having an old head like this could really be good for this defense.
Again, it's another guy. Sorry to cut you off.
No,
Eddie, that make it or break it year for a guy like Kendall Daniels, who I think's had a really solid career. Not a great year this last year, but still a really solid career. And I'm really interested to see where they end up playing him.
Kendall Daniels' best year probably in Stillwater coming in 2023, 105 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, was very active, 64 tackles, 5.5 sacks, 7 passes defended this past year in 2024 for an Oklahoma State defense that obviously went through its fair share of struggles. But that kind of leads into the next conversation. Just in total, it does seem like, on paper at least, when you're talking about OU defensively going into 2025, as Josh said, there is a ton to like and a lot of talent on that side of the ball, even despite it might not having as much experience as you would hope going into next season.
Yeah, again, this is just one of those deals where, you look at Kip Lewis, obviously played a lot of football, but Kobe McKenzie, as much as he's kind of rotated in and out, there's not tons and tons of snaps there. So, I think Kendall Daniels just gives them a lot of flexibility, which is something we know Brent Venables likes. He allows you to do some different things without changing personnel groups. Kendall's a guy that can play near the line of scrimmage. He can play as kind of an off-ball linebacker. And then, again, like we said, he could play some cheetah stuff. They could do some stuff like that with him because Oklahoma State's moved him around a lot. People forget how long that guy's been there. He was the Big 12 Defensive Freshman of the Year in 2022, redshirted in 21. So this is a guy that's been around it for a while now. And I think also this means something to him. This is a guy that, again, we talked about this, I think on the podcast last week. This is a guy that wanted to go to Oklahoma. Like this has value to him to have this opportunity. And I think George brings up a good point on both these guys. These are guys that have NFL potential. These aren't guys that were like, oh, I'm just happy to be here in college. These are guys that thought, okay, I could play in the NFL if everything goes right. And both Marvin Jones and Kendall Daniels, this is their last chance. Like, this is the opportunity. And you've got to think they are going to be, to sound a little younger than I absolutely am, 10 toes down. Like, this is all you've got. This is your last opportunity to really make a run at something.
Yeah, I really like what they've done in the portal on the defensive side of the ball. And even on the offense, we can get into that later if we want. I think that they have some pieces that we'll have to wait and see if they pan out. But defensively, they've landed guys at positions that they needed, and guys that, like Josh said, they're NFL caliber players if they reach their ceiling. So I still think they'd probably like to add a veteran corner. Ethan O'Connor ends up committing to Miami, I think was that Friday maybe?
Yes.
So
Friday or Saturday. It might have been Saturday.
Maybe Saturday. Somebody that they really liked, brought in on a visit. But, I think other than that, they feel really good about what they're bringing back next year defensively.
You think they'll try and be active still at cornerback, maybe in the spring portal?
Maybe in the
something
spring
were
portal.
to open up. Oklahoma currently at 14 commitments out of the transfer portal. Obviously, just 2 of those on the defensive side of the ball with Marvin Jones Jr. as well as Kendall Daniels joining the fold over the last 24 hours. And then you have the host of offensive players. Obviously, that side of the football is going to need to be completely overhauled to a certain extent. We knew that going in. But as for other portal targets, it seems like it's starting to dwindle down. I know that, obviously you have some guys that are in the portal out of teams that are playing in the college football playoff. But, a name that was thrown out there today by Pete Nakos, Sterling Dixon from Alabama, as well as Owen Wolf's, his name's been out there from Michigan, the defensive lineman. It seems like maybe there's still just a little bit of a focus on the defensive side of the ball here before they really start winter workouts and obviously the spring semester starting in Norman.
Yeah, I think they definitely still would like to maybe add a defensive tackle. And you look at Owen, is it Waffle?
Is it Waffle?
Waffle. I don't know.
Waffle.
Yeah, I know OU recruited him. Josh could probably chime in on that. OU recruited him a year ago.
Sure.
But he's somebody that didn't play much for Michigan, but is somebody that maybe he could come in and contribute a little bit next year, but is more of a developmental piece. I think they like that interior group that's coming back when you talk about Grayson Halton, Dominic Williams, obviously, Jaden Jackson, and David Stone. But if you could add a guy like Owen that would maybe come in and develop and maybe turn into a player, you would love to see that. So I think that's one guy. And then, at Sterling Dixon at linebacker, I think he's another guy that's a true freshman, didn't play at Alabama this year, really. He could come in and develop, be kind of almost take that Lewis Carter spot in terms of developing a younger player. And it's not to say they don't like, James Nesta or Marcus James who's coming in, but I think if you can add more to that linebacker room, they'd like to.
Houston, North Carolina, West Virginia have all kind of voiced interest for Sterling Dixon. Josh, do you have much familiarity, or do you remember when Oklahoma went after the Waffle Kid coming out of high school not too long ago?
Yeah, I mean, this was a guy, I liked him on tape, very active, real physical with his hands. Like, I remember him being a guy that's like, that's just a dude. You don't want to block him for 4 quarters. Like, we've heard Gabe Eichert talk about like those little stumpy kind of defensive tackles that are real active, real strong. That's kind of like that. That's always what he made me think of. Like, that would just be a chore blocking that guy. And I do want to say, as a side note, his younger brother Luke is a big-time 2026 recruit that Oklahoma's involved with as well. Another guy out of the Hun School in New Jersey. So, could be a kind of double win if Oklahoma could find a way to Owen. Now, George, I do want to say, and I think I know the answer to this. I just kind of want to make sure we've got some clarity for people. We mentioned Sterling Dixon from Alabama, but Jeremiah Alexander was also connected to Oklahoma at some point. I've got to think Marvin Jones kind of makes that move, right? Is that kind of what that looks like to you?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's correct.
Yeah.
Will be interesting to continue following Oklahoma's efforts in the transfer portal. It's obviously not just completely done. There's still a couple names to be out there.
And they'll be active in the spring portal, too.
Yeah, no doubt. And who knows what you're going to lose coming out of spring, or what happens there.
By spring.
Certainly staff changes. Oklahoma's still awaiting any type of movement on the defensive coordinator front. The Wes Goodwin news did come out officially that he's been let go by Clemson. Who knows if that's a situation that Oklahoma would try to tab him as a co-DC? Would Brandon Hall be named as DC and he just comes in as a linebacker coach? Obviously, there's some connections there going back to Clemson. It's still kind of a guessing game, right, in terms of what Brent Venables is going to do there.
Yeah, I think that we'll know here in the next couple weeks, but I don't know that for sure.
Josh, or George and Josh, is there a sense of urgency that needs to be there that maybe hasn't been there?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think that, the reality of the situation is Brent's kind of the defensive coordinator. And, look, I don't know who's going to call plays next year, but look, they were able to land 2 guys without a defensive coordinator in the transfer portal over the weekend. So They're selling something good over there. Now, I think that you would like to go get a linebackers coach for recruiting's sake, and especially if you want to land maybe a linebacker in the transfer portal, that would certainly help you. So maybe it moves quicker than what we think. But look, I think Wes Goodwin would make some sense. Obviously, worked closely with Brent. I think if you just promoted James Skalski to linebackers coach, that would make some sense. I know he's very well liked in the locker room. Brandon Hall, if you wanted to promote him to defensive coordinator and bring someone in like a Wes Goodwin to be the linebackers coach, I think all of that would make sense. I think that those are probably the most likely scenarios, but I'm sure there's a lot of young coaches, even older coaches out there that would love to be the linebackers coach or defensive coordinator at Oklahoma.
Josh, do you get a sense that is there a sense of urgency to make this hire, or is it kind of in a middle ground right now where it doesn't really hurt you, but it'd be nice to have somebody?
I think more than anything, it's probably urgency from our perspective. Like, what's the hierarchy going to be? What does this thing look like? Like, for Oklahoma, I can get why there's not like a huge, like, oh, this has got to be done now. This isn't one of those situations. There are other issues on that staff that I feel like there should be more urgency about. This one's fine. Like, this is something, because guys, we can act like we don't know who's going to call plays. We know who's going to call plays. Like, let's just be real about it. Like, that is 100% expected. And I know a lot of people, guys, we were talking about it. Like, how does this fit with Wes Goodwin obviously being let go at Clemson? is that a bad look for Oklahoma? If he's the linebackers coach or the co-DC or whatever, fine. Like I don't have any big problem with that. He's a guy Brent's worked with a lot. He's very familiar with him. We all know that whoever is the linebackers coach, Brent's going to be around it. James Skalski's going to be around it. Rufus Alexander. Like there's a lot of cooks in that kitchen. Like I don't think they're going to have a problem with linebacker play. Like I just don't believe that. So I think you get a guy that can recruit, and we've seen this. This guy has landed some big time players at Clemson. So I think there's something to be said for that. What's interesting to me, guys, is we talk about like could Brandon Hall be co-DC? Could it be Wes Godwin or Goodwin? God, I keep going back and forth. Todd Bates is currently the only guy on staff that is listed as a co-DC, and we never mention him for this. Sure. And I don't know if that's unfair to him. I don't know how that works, but I think that's an interesting thing that we kind of just kind of forget about.
Always kind of gets into the title thing. Is it just a title to get you a little bit more money at the end of the day from the Board of Regents? Who knows? We shall see where that goes for Oklahoma here in the coming days, coming weeks. Certainly, as they're going to need to fill a position on staff, and as George said, possible other staffing questions come into focus here over the next couple. So that's the positive. There's a lot of positive there, and I'm about 75% all the way back and thinking that this thing isn't broken and we're headed in the right direction. Hey, we'll see. It's J6. Easy. Bad news coming out of the recruiting world, though. Surprising news at that. 2027 defensive end Zane Rowe from Denton Guyer, Texas, has decommitted from Oklahoma. And Josh, I think to a lot of people, this came as a big surprise. What has been the latest as Zane Rowe decommits Monday morning?
Yeah, and this is something that I admit caught me a little by surprise. Talking to Zane, he's always been super communicative, and we've talked a lot. And I know, he was a guy that was really impressed and, happy for Michael Fasusi and how well he had done at the Under Armour game over the last week. So I just had gotten the impression, okay, he's locked in, he's fine. But went ahead and decommitted, and I think what the entire thing was, and this is the part that's not surprising at all. He was honest, and we'll have some quotes up by the time, our members are seeing this. They've already read some stuff on the board that I've put up. But what it basically came down to is I think he wanted to take some visits. I think he had some people around him, not like family or anything, because they very much are on board with Oklahoma. But I think he just wanted to see what else is out there. And he knew he'd given his word to Oklahoma. He wasn't going to do that. I think if it wasn't for the policy, I think the kid's still committed to Oklahoma. I think that's still what he would like to do. That's still where he sees himself. But he wants to see what else is out there. This guy committed ridiculously early and really hadn't seen a lot, had been to Oklahoma a whole mess of times. So, again, I don't think this is Zane Rowe and Oklahoma are on the rocks at all. I think if he was signing tomorrow, he'd be signing with Oklahoma, and I don't really think he'd have much doubt about it. But he does want to see what else is out there. He doesn't want to break his word to Oklahoma. So I think he handled this as well as you possibly could have. And we all know these things are tough for, I'm not even sure if Zane can drive yet. So, we're talking about a very young guy having to make some kind of grown-up decisions and kind of deal. And like I said, has dealt with it in a really, really good way.
So, Josh, do you think that he could still end up in Oklahoma?
Absolutely. And like I said, I'll have some quotes, and if those of you are out there that haven't signed up, sign up. You can see it. I get in trouble sometimes for sharing too much here and not enough on the board. So trying to walk that line really finely, but absolutely gave me the impression that Oklahoma is still very much more, I guess I would say more than a possibility, probably a probability in the way he looks at it right now.
Sounds like something almost kind of familiar with Jonathan Hatton, maybe not in terms of getting him back into the fold in a recruiting class, but just I think more times than not, and especially here as of late in the recruiting world, you're seeing guys that are just don't commit sophomore, junior year. Is that kind of the easy answer, and especially with the way Oklahoma kind of runs their commitments?
Absolutely, guys. And that's the thing. And to Oklahoma's credit, we know I've been critical of the policy and I don't love it and all that sort of things. At the same time, Oklahoma's very direct about it. Like, hey, if you're not sure, that's okay. They don't pressure. There's no high risk sales, pitch going on or anything like that. They're very much, hey, you should know this going in. Well, this is what we expect of you. This is what you can expect from us. They're very direct about it. So like that's fine. And again, Zane knew the deal. And I remember when he committed, I want to say on one of our shows, guys, we talked about this, like kind of blew me away with how calm he was about it. But I think sometimes it seems great. And then you're like, oh, well, I'd like to go. Because, we talked about this back in the fall when he went to Texas A&M for a magazine photo shoot. It just happened to be where it was going on. And he's getting calls from me and I'm sure other OU reporters and all that stuff. And he's like, I just was down there for this. Like, this wasn't even a game day visit. So I think he probably doesn't want his life to feel like everything's counter espionage. And he just kind of wants to, if I want to go see a Texas game, I'll go see a Texas game, or Alabama or wherever it may be. He can do those things without feeling like he's, done somebody wrong. And again, he let OU know what was going on. This wasn't a surprise to anybody. So I think he's, like I said, it's not a comfortable situation. It's not a fun conversation to have. But at the same time, I think he handled it really, really well.
Very good. 2027, Oklahoma doesn't have any commitments now. He was the lone commitment. 3 in the 2026 class. Jaden O'Neal, Ryder Mix, Will Conroy, who joined the party a couple weeks ago. So that's going to do it. A good update there on everything for Oklahoma. Certainly 2 big pickups out of the transfer portal with Marvin Jones Jr. as well as Kendall Daniels. And we'll continue to kind of watch everything else. Obviously, the rest of what could or possibly what could be happening here in moving forward with the rest of this portal class, and then obviously a defense coordinator search somewhat underway. For George Stoya, I'm Eddie Radosevich. He's Josh McCuistion. We will talk to you next time on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel.